Hello and welcome to Pardon My German for this video on Bonn's Museum Mile, a collection of 5 museums within about 2 miles, actually. I start my excursion of the Museum Mile here at Museumsplatz, Museum Square, with the Kunstmuseum Bonn, the Bonn Art Museum, and just on the other side, the Bundeskunsthalle, the Federal Arts Gallery. So let's have a look. The Bundeskunsthalle, Federal Arts Gallery, is one of Germany's most frequently visited museums. Built between 1989 and 1992, it displays changing exhibitions regarding culture and arts from all over the world. During my visit, there were 3 exhibitions. This one was on sustainable architecture.
Mehr glauben können, haben sie sich von allen Menschen gemacht. Bildern glauben sie sich ihrer Angst entledigt. Bildern glauben sie ihre Hoffnung erfüllt, ihre Freude befriedigt, ihre Sehnsucht gestillt.
Die Menschen haben sich nicht die Erde untertan gemacht. Sie sind ihr untertan geworden.
Erinnerst du dich, wie einfach sein war?
Another exhibition covered the works of German filmmaker Wim Wenders. As you can hear, I don't use background music in this section to give an impression of the experience in this museum. Finally, there was an exhibition on the American photographer Susan Sontag. The Kunstmuseum Bonn, Bonn Art Museum, was built at the same time as the Federal Arts Gallery. It featured an exhibition on August Macke and Rhenish Expressionism, which I considered fitting the museum's name and purpose.
Das ist normalerweise außen reingeht und da werden wir so eine kleine Startlichtreihe machen und wird als erstes eure Offenheimer und die neuen Arbeiten bekommen dann Leute Brecht an und der Film ganz kleine Zeitung nochmal und meiner Offenheim.
Diese Automobilzeit.
Nee, aber
Also da hat er das Macke-Haus da und ein großer Rausch.
The remaining exhibits, however, left me a bit clueless. I've just left those two art museums, and as you might have guessed already, didn't spend much time there, and you see me somewhat bewildered. Maybe not as bewildered as I was after seeing all these frequently not particularly religious or sacred pieces of art in the Diocesan Museum in Cologne, but bewildered enough. And it wasn't just the content of the museums, it was the whole presentation. It was the fairly obnoxious, I find, way that there seemed to be more staff there than visitors. And you have people following you at every step that you take. Felt almost a bit like in prison. So that's something that should definitely change. There's other museums where you don't have such kind of control of the visitors on every step they take. So, didn't like it. By the way, as I'm on my way to the Bonn dependency of the Deutsches Museum, the German museum, the road that I'm walking along here, you can see in my background here, it used to be called, when I was younger, it used to be called the Diplomatic Speedway. Because when Bonn was still the capital, there were all the diplomats here. Most of the embassies were a bit further up the road. And of course, all the members of the diplomatic court enjoyed diplomatic impunity. So they sometimes drove along this street at outrageous speeds. And basically for the judiciary, they were untouchable. I finally arrived here at the Deutsches Museum in Bonn. Seems a bit hidden here, almost in a side street, and you can't miss it because there's this Transrapid behind me near the entrance. So I will now have a look at I hope I will not be as bewildered as after visiting these two arts museums. As mentioned before, this museum is a dependency of the famous Deutsches Museum in Munich. Over the past few years, its focus has shifted towards robotics and artificial intelligence. Have a look at this android. The facial impression somehow reminded me of Yul Brynner in the movie Westworld. So, hello to part 2 of our excursion of the Museum Mile. I have to admit, after visiting the first 3 museums last week, I was quite disappointed, and by the end of the video, I'll give you a wrap-up of the 3 museums. I'm a bit more optimistic now because the building I'm standing in front of Museum Koenig. I've visited this museum quite frequently during my days in elementary school and the first 2 years of grammar school, in school excursions and excursions with the Catholic youth. So I hope I won't be that disappointed, and later we will visit the House of German History. So let's have a look. This is a bust of the museum's founder, Alexander Koenig. There is a touch of history in this place, as West Germany's Parliamentary Assembly, elected to draft a new constitution, was inaugurated here. And for the first 2 months of his tenure, Chancellor Konrad Adenauer had his office inside the museum. As you can easily see, this is a museum of natural science, which was founded in the early 20th century. And it is more than just a museum. It is a scientific institution focused primarily on biodiversity. Apart from the public exhibits, it has a large collection of artifacts accessible solely to the scientific community. Just across the street, you can get a glimpse of Villa Hammerschmidt, seat of Germany's president when he's in Bonn. Next to it is Palais Schaumburg, which from 1949 through 1976 served as the residence of West Germany's chancellors. So, if I'm not wrong, this seems to be the area of the old chancellery here in Bonn. And this might even be the fence that Gerhard Schröder, when he was a young member of parliament, he grabbed this fence or one fence here around the chancellery and rattled it and yelled, "I want to get in here." So, and yeah, many years later he did. So, yeah. This is fitting to my second video of Bonn, where I have introduced the government quarters here with the plenary building and so on. We're walking really on historical grounds here. Unfortunately, the permanent exhibition in the House of German History, which is free of charge, by the way, was closed. Except for these parts in the basement, like the limousine and the train of West Germany's chancellors. Apparently, these relics of the Roman age were found on site when this museum was built. The temporary exhibition dealt with Germany after Hitler in a very well designed, moving fashion. I was particularly pleased to see that the exhibition did not shy away from the contemporary brand of anti Semitism as carried out, among others, by Hamas and its supporters here in Germany. As mentioned before, here's a brief wrap up of the Museum Mile. First question, of course, would I recommend visiting all five of them? Probably not. And I have to admit, I should have looked up some information on the museums before visiting them. Now, that one's on me. I visited the first three with wrong expectations. My expectations regarding the two art museums were as follows. If a place is called Federal Art Gallery, I thought it to contain German art post 1945. And as you could see, that is clearly not the case. And if it's named Bonn Art Museum, that made me think of a regional focus, which was met by the exhibition on August Macke and Rhenish Expressionism, to be fair. All that notwithstanding, both houses seem to lack a concise concept, proper presentation, and as mentioned, I for one felt watched, if not controlled, by staff members all the time. And that was not an enjoyable experience. Plus, both museums charge twice or nearly twice the entrance fee as, for example, Cologne's Museum Schnütgen for sacred art. That was way too much for my taste. A similar thing can be said about the German Museum. Their entrance fee is €9, and given the fact that the museum's very tiny, that was not really value for money. So, my 5 cents on that, either they should enlarge this museum and move it to a bigger location, or they should close it. And as you should always end on a positive note. Museum Koenig was exactly as I remembered and brought back lots of childhood memories. Definitely worth a visit if you're in the area, and it's particularly interesting for children. And even though the permanent exhibition was closed, the House of German History was a highlight. I will certainly visit again as soon as that permanent exhibition is open again. A visit there can be very well combined with the old government area nearby. The plenary building, the banks of the Rhine, the old waterworks, all that is easily within walking distance from the House of German History. So that's it regarding the Museum Mile. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on the next video. Bye bye.